Welcome, everybody, to the Notorious OTB, brought to you by the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. And folks, as always,
good, baby. It was all a dream.
We used to read Blood Horse magazine. I got my Cuban link.
Yes, Cuban B.
I'm your host, Chase Sessoms, the Wolf of Oaklawn.
I'd rather be trapped than lazy. Don't care what they say, I'ma do what pays me.
It happens every year about this time. Weaklings act like they lost their mind. Alphas reclaim the neighborhood. Rob the sheep and all the wolves eat good.
Yes. Welcome to the show. Joining me, as always, you might know him as the Michelangelo of the Crying Michael Jordan. He's your favorite capper's favorite capper, ladies and gentlemen, the benevolent time traveler, Barry the Sniper Spears.
You know how we do. Rockefeller. Forever. Catch me skating through your town, putting it down. Y'all relating, no waiting. I'll make your block infrared hot. I'm like Satan.
And our first AM host or AM guest here at the Notorious OTB, joining us to talk some pedigree, ladies and gentlemen, Jessica Tugwell.
Where she get the look from? Get it from my mama. Or where she get that ass from? Get it from my mama. Or where she get her class from? Get it from my mama.
What's up, Jessica? How are you?
I am doing well. How are you guys doing?
Doing good. I'm glad that you approved that sound drop. I was really excited to use it, quite honestly. Jessica, we always have you here for like the most important weekends because you are our pedigree expert, the person who tells us what horses got it in their blood to do stuff. We're talking Kentucky Derby pedigree today. Barry and I were talking offline. We're talking about how important pedigree is going to be in this year's Derby. But Barry, you wanna kind of jump in on that?
Yeah, I'm really under the impression that a lot of these horses may not want to go 1.25 miles, and that to me might be really, really useful information in kind of narrowing down some of these contenders. If you can eliminate horses just because you don't think they can go the distance, that would make our jobs as bettors a lot easier.
Yeah,
well,
absolutely.
let's dive into it. Jessica, we got you here for a reason. We're talking pedigree. Who's got the most standout pedigree for this year's Kentucky Derby?
Well, I mean, everybody knows Beza, who may or may not actually make it into the field, but when it comes to just standout pedigree, it doesn't get better than a half-brother to the Kentucky Derby winner from 2 years ago and the Belmont winner from last year. So obviously that's kind of a gimme. But there are some other pedigrees in here that stand out to me, especially when it comes to, getting the Kentucky Derby distance. I do think that the favorite journalism is a really well-bred horse and a horse who I expect to be able to get the distance just fine. He's by Curlin and out of a mare by Uncle Mo. And while Uncle Mo himself probably didn't want 10 furlongs, he's proven that with the right other influences in the pedigree, he can, he has a Belmont Stakes winner. So I'm not really that concerned about the distance for journalism. And then there are some others that I think are pretty interesting. One that's caught my eye that I didn't really pay a ton of attention to until I started digging deep was Grande. I think that he has a pretty interesting pedigree. He's also a Curlin, but he comes from a really deep female family that makes me think that there's plenty of class there for a horse who, we haven't seen a ton from yet. I'm not sure that, the Derby is going to be his coming out party, but he kind of strikes me as a horse that's going to have some more to show us in the future, whether that comes this Saturday or further down the line. He was one that I thought had a pretty good pedigree for the Derby distance. And I don't think Final Gambit will have a problem with the distance at all either. He's one I think will want every ounce of that extra eighth of a mile. It's just a matter of surface for him and whether he's going to be able to translate his form to dirt.
You know, you mentioned Final Gambit, which was one of three horses that I thought was really interesting because for us pedigree rookies, we can kind of look at the Tomlinson figures from the DRF and get sort of an idea if they can handle the distance. And the three that graded out the best with the Tomlinsons, Final Gambit, who you mentioned, who was like head and shoulders above. But also, I was a little bit surprised by Burnham Square and Render Judgment. How trustworthy are those Tomlinsons, do you think, Jess?
I personally don't pay a ton of attention to them when it comes to distance, but I would definitely agree with Render Judgment being able to get the distance. He is one horse who I have in my should thrive at the distance. Burnham Square is one that I kind of keep going back and forth on. I lean toward the distance being all right for him, but Liam's map doesn't necessarily make me think run all day. He never raced beyond 9 furlongs. He is the sire of Colonel Liam, who was a Grade 1 winner on the turf at 10 furlongs. And he is the sire of a graded stakes winner at 12 furlongs on the turf as well. And on the bottom half of his pedigree, there is a little more stamina. Scat Daddy obviously is the sire of Justify, who's a Triple Crown winner. And you go back a little bit further, and there's some more quality. He actually goes back to the same family as horses, Grade 1 winners, Lost in the Fog, La Coronelle, and Bonaparte. Don't read too much into, that champion sprinter, not champion, but Grade 1 winning sprinter there. I don't think that's going to be an issue. But he is also bred on the same cross as Basin, who was a more speedy type of horse. So I think it's interesting that he ended up being one of the top distance horses on the Tomlinson figures. But he's not a horse I would throw out because of the distance, but he's not a horse that I think is really bred to really thrive going 10 furlongs either.
Gotcha.
Well, let's talk about throwouts. Who do you think that we can absolutely throw out with the distance?
Well, this is a tough question because last year I would have told you that Mystic Dan was a horse that I felt comfortable leaving off my tickets solely because of the distance of the race. So
honestly, though, that really wasn't a bad assessment because what had to happen for that horse to win was very, very lucky. Mm-hmm. And I think that was a fluky kind of result, as you can see from what's Mystic Dan has done after that race. Mm-hmm. So I think your analysis was probably spot on. The luck kind of swung the other way.
Yeah, right? Exactly. It's the Derby, so anything can happen. But there are 3 horses in here who I think I feel pretty confident don't want the distance. And then there are a lot of horses that I have serious doubts about. The 3 that I'm pretty confident don't want the distance are Owen Almighty, Coal Battle, and Citizen Bull. Those are 3 that I'm just don't think want the distance. Citizen Bull is bred on that Into Mischief Distorted Humor cross that gave us horses like Practical Joke and Life is Good. So really, really talented horses, but with distance limitations. Despite the fact that he is technically the sire of 2 Kentucky Derby winners, I will always have doubts about an Into Mischief going 1.25 miles. He still has yet to have a horse cross the finish line first on the first Saturday in May in the Kentucky Derby. So have some doubts following on from that. Little bit of doubt about Rodriguez. He's by Into Mischief's son Authentic, who was a 2-time winner at the 1.25 miles, but who I perhaps naively and stubbornly still don't think was a 1.25 mile horse. And he's out of a mare by Cherokee Run, who is a sprinter. Having said that, the way he finished up the Wood Memorial helps alleviate concerns I would have about Rodriguez. But he is one of the ones that I've kind of gone back and forth on between, no, I don't really think he can get the distance. And, well, he finished up his race well enough, going the 1 1/8 and galloped out full of run after that Wood Memorial.
Yeah, it was funny because I was at the Wood Memorial, and now looking back at that race and then Rodriguez' body of work, The 2 wins he got seriously easy trips. I mean, he couldn't have got it any easier in the Wood Memorial. Um, I think he ran fast, but I think a lot of that was confidence of him being all alone on the lead.
He's
So,
not going to get that.
right, yeah, I don't see too many situations where that could happen. In fact, it sounded like yesterday when Bob Baffert was talking about his 2 horses, he was basically saying that Citizen Bull was going to be the lead blocker for Rodriguez, and that makes a lot of sense because Rodriguez really doesn't want to come from far back. At least you wouldn't think so, just based on his running style in his first 5 races. That's not saying that he couldn't do it, but the idea, I think, would be just to get a kind of a pocket trip, almost like Mystic Dan did last year.
Yeah, stalking
So
right.
it's interesting. Yeah,
there.
it's interesting to see how this is going to play out. But no, your information you're giving us right now is totally, absolutely useful.
Yeah, and I think Sovereignty, who's the other actual son of Into Mischief in the field, he worries me at the distance. I last year decided that I was going to go against everything that I had believed about Pedigree and take oh, what was his name? The horse, the Into Mischief. He made a huge move in the Derby, ranged up, looked like a
Resilience?
threat. Yes, Resilience.
Yeah.
Where I was like, I think I'm gonna go with this, and then I saw him hit that wall, and I was like, Into Mischief again. And Sovereignty kind of feels like a horse who could do a very similar thing, make a really threatening move at some point during the race, but just not be able to kind of really finish it. And then Admire Daytona. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to ask, what about Sandman? I know he was kind of bred for this, sort of. But I'm not really sure what to make of him, and especially those Oaklawn Park races where Cole Battle was beating everybody. He doesn't seem like the type that would win a race like this, but stranger things have happened.
Yeah, I like Sandman. I think Sandman's going to be an underlay though. I don't think that whatever he goes off at between just kind of the name and the social media hype, I don't think he is going to be fair odds. But I think he's a horse that could absolutely hit the board. I think that he's going to want every bit of the distance. Chase and I were actually talking about him a little bit before we went live, that I think he's going to want every bit of the distance. I worry a little bit about him, whether he's going to be able to work out a trip.
Yeah, that's.
But I think he's going to be coming. I think he still has some lessons to learn, as was kind of obvious with how green he was in the Arkansas Derby. And that's kind of the one question people a lot of times have about Tappets is their minds and whether he's really mature enough yet at this stage to pull this off. But I think he's got a lot of talent. I don't think he's quite as one-paced as some other horses in similar molds that we've had, like Tappet Trice. I think he's got more gears than a horse like Tappet Trice. He's still not, push button. But I like him definitely to hit the board. I think he's gonna run his race.
Yeah, I kind of gravitate towards him as well because he had a stretch there from when he broke his maiden to winning the Arkansas Derby where he just got some seriously bad trips, and a lot of it was due to his running style. But if the last race, the Arkansas Derby, was any indication of what the Derby is going to look like, especially pace-wise, you got to think Sandman is going to get a nice trip and be coming at least trying to get first run, which could end up being the winning move. But he's got to get in the race a lot earlier, and that's really my only reservation about him. I think he fits very well, and he's coming into the race perfectly. It's just, like you said, a matter of trip and distance, but I think he's okay.
Yeah, he's one I think he will be coming at the end. Where he is at the end, I'm not sure. Whether that, gets him a really solid 4th or 5th even, but I do think that, and if he can get a clear run, I think he's a win contender.
How about the Japanese contingent? Those
two? They're very interesting. Admire Daytona, he does technically have that, that mile and 3/16 win in the UAE Derby, but he was kind of gasping for air at the end of that. And he's not bred to want to go a mile and a quarter. He's the son of a Breeders' Cup Sprint winner, out of a mare by Shackelford, who won the Preakness, but it didn't really want more distance than that. He was that, if people will remember in the Derby, he ran his heart out, but very clearly hit a physical wall. It was a stamina limit in the Derby. So I don't think Admire Daytona is really a horse that I'm super interested in, especially because he's already been beaten by the other Japanese contender, Luxor Cafe, twice. But Luxor Cafe is very interesting. He's a full brother to Cafe Pharaoh, who is
okay.
a very talented horse
Yes.
in Japan, a 3-time Grade 1 winner in Japan. All 3 of those Grade 1 wins for Cafe Pharaoh were going a mile on the dirt. He was a winner at up to a mile and 3/16, but was well beaten in all 3 of his attempts at 10 furlongs. One of those was on turf, and he was a dirt horse, so there's some excuse for at least that one. And then the other 2 were in the Dubai World Cup and the Japan Cup, so high-class races, but he was well beaten in both of those attempts. His dam also has produced a Grade 1 winning turf miler, Regal Glory, and a multiple graded stakes winner, Night Prowler, who was a winner at 7.5 and 8.5 furlongs on the turf. So they're actually, I want to say he should be fine. I mean, American Pharaoh obviously was a Grade 1 winner at up to 12 furlongs, but there are some reasons to question whether 10 furlongs is going to be his best game on paper, at least. And I admit I have not had the chance yet to go and kind of look physically at his wins. I've just kind of seen but on paper, it looks like he's finishing up his races with enough left in the tank that you wouldn't really doubt it. But it's worth noting that the full brother, wasn't successful at that distance.
Yeah. I tend to think like, most of these horses there's that one little question mark of actually getting the distance, but I also think that if you can get a mile and 1/8, you probably could get the mile and a quarter, just depending, trip, stuff like that. Some of these horses would need the absolute best trip ever to get the distance. Others, it's kind of in between. So yeah, this is definitely great information.
And a horse in that former category.
What you got, man?
What do I got?
Who is?
East Avenue is a horse who I think is in that former category of, maybe later down the line in something like the Travers. If he gets a clear lead in a race like the Travers, he could probably get a mile and a quarter. But pressured in a race like the Derby, I don't think East Avenue wants that. Yeah, exactly.
He reminds me a lot of Dornoch in general, but interesting.
But yeah, with the way the pace is set up, I don't see him.
Yeah, this
you bring up
full speed.
you bring up the pace, which we're actually about to take a quick peek at here. Guys, real quick, don't forget, check out surebetcoffee.com. The Surebetties would sure appreciate it. Remember, a dollar of every bag sold goes to equine aftercare.
It's time to fuck shit up with Surebet in your cup.
All right. We're not going to get too crazy in depth with the pace because we kind of talked about it on the post-draw show. I've got the Timeform US pace projection pulled up here. There are some things I agree with. There are some things I disagree with. One of the things I disagree with is we all know that, according to what Bob says, Citizen Bull is just going. So you can almost put Citizen Bull up there on top with the number 12 East Avenue. I don't know. I kind of the opinion with the pace in this race that you just hit yourself to a rocket at a huge price that might get the clean trip and might be able to make up the distance. Jessica, do you have any takes on the pace before I move to Barry?
No, pretty much. It's going to be a fast pace, and I'm kind of with you that you want someone who's coming from behind in here. Someone who's going to be at least, I would think, like 4 lengths off. You want someone who's going to, not necessarily coming from the clouds, which might be part of the problem with a horse like Sandman, but someone who's going to be coming from a little bit further back, which, kind of points to the favorite, I think, as far as the pace scenario. I think it sets up really well for journalism.
Yeah. Barry, what do you think? What are the odds a horse wires this? And are you kind of with Jess and I looking at like a first run mid-pack kind of horse?
I'm kind of torn. I really, I don't think it's going to be as hot as we think, because of the fact there's some horses that are not really wanting to be on the lead, aka horses like Rodriguez and possibly somebody like Luxor Cafe or Meyer Daytona, because I think the pace that they have up on DRF is really indicative up front, but the middle pack, I think a lot of the horses that like journalism, for example, are really going to be in the mix, but not up front, but towards the end of that little graphic. I think that's where they'll be. Just waiting to get first run around the far turn, and trying to save ground as much as they can. But it's really going to be interesting, especially up front, because there is a situation where East Avenue clears everybody and kind of controls things. I mean, obviously going that fast, he's going to have to slow down, then start up again, and that's very, very difficult to do. Having said that, that leaves up opening possibilities for other horses to come off the pace, especially ones that won't be too far back. Those are the ones that I'm interested in.
Mm-hmm.
I just have to kind of make my way to figure out who might be in that spot, and that's probably where I'm going to focus my attention on.
Well,
Yeah, American Promise is one I think might be in a good spot.
Yes, that's one of the horses I think might be a beneficiary of East Avenue and Owen Almighty drawn where they are, because this horse doesn't really want the lead, I don't think, and could get a really good trip and get first run. Like a horse like that, I could see being in the lead at the top of the stretch. Now, whether he can finish it off is a whole nother story, but that's where, at least right now, where I see that kind of trip for American Promise, who, in all honesty, might be the forgotten horse here.
I could see that.
right,
He is one I think will like the distance.
I've got one last question for both of you, and it is, I don't expect you to stick to this all week because I know a lot can change with scratches, with weather. I just want everybody's gut reaction. No gun to the head. I'm not going to threaten. I'm not going to threaten anybody by pointing a firearm. I just want to know right now, what does your gut tell you, Jessica? Who's your Derby horse as of right now? Gut reaction.
As of right now, it's journalism.
Okay.
Just
Barry.
Boring, but
yeah, that's fair. Hey, you gave solid reasoning behind the pedigree too. So it makes sense. No shame at all. Makes sense. Barry, what do you think?
I would say if you put a gun to my head and had me bet right now, I would take Luxor Cafe.
My mind is telling me no, but my body is telling me Tistastic. I think.
Okay.
I really
respect that.
I kind of like Tistastic. I like that he won earlier in the year, and then he's had this like time off to kind of like develop, and Asmussen slamming 5 furlong works through him. Gut reaction right now says Tistastic. Fortunately for Barry and I, like we don't have to firm up any opinions till tomorrow, it seems. Guys, Jess, thank you so much for stopping by, talking pedigree.
Always.
Crucial parts of this Derby. That's going to do it for us here at the Notorious OTB, brought to you by the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. Barry and I are going to be talking Churchill Downs all week. Tomorrow we've got long shots for the Churchill Downs Tuesday card. Wednesday we're going to take a look ahead at Thurby with a $100 budget. Thursday we're going to take a look at the Oaks Day card with a $100 budget. Friday we're really going to have some opinions from up, and we're going to be talking the Kentucky Derby card with a $100 budget. We'll have people joining us for everything, but that's going to be it for us. We are headed out. We love you. Bye-bye.
Peace.